Hello everyone, I'm back today with another video. This is going to be a recording of my 2025 Winter Tournament game, Round 4. This game was played against Blue Tom, as you can see there. Both he and I had a record of 2 wins and 1 loss heading into Round 4. My Round 3 game actually resulted in a forfeit win for me. My opponent did not show up to the game at the time we had scheduled it, so I ended up getting a free win for that round, progressing to 2-1 in the tournament and then facing off against this opponent here. Who was also 2-1. But I remember looking up his stats before the game and seeing that he was about 250 elo at the time that we started the game, which surprised me a little bit that someone of that elo had the a 2-1 record in the tournament so far, and he ended up playing a lot stronger than 250 elo in my opinion. But this is going to be a recording that is using the function of the website to replay the game. I wasn't able to record the game in real time, where you might be able to see like the time it took us to make each move or anything like that. I actually played this game on my phone while I was traveling, so my focus wasn't necessarily the strongest it could have been, but it still resulted in a pretty good game. In this setup here that I decided to go with, just something that seemed interesting and fun to play at the moment. I saw his elo before the game, figured I might be able to have a little bit of fun with the setup I choose. So it just seemed like something that would be fun to me. But let's go ahead and get into this game and see what happens. So when this game was played in real time, it took pretty close to the full hour of the allotted game time to play. So I think on the recording function it'll be a little bit quicker than that, but definitely wasn't a short game. You can see there's 600 moves, not terribly long, but not terribly short either. But my plan with this setup was to advance on the right side. I wanted to come out with these 2 captains and have my colonel there to back it up if needed. But you can see my first attack there. Thwarted pretty easily by his major. Take a scout, my captain did, and then lost immediately to that major. So then I bring up a sergeant. I wouldn't bring up the real colonel yet, so I bring up a sergeant. I was hoping to force the major away, but I wasn't able to do that because I wanted to hit this piece with my captain if I had forced his major away, but wasn't quite successful. So then I decided I was going to start advancing in the center, but he starts advancing on the left side. So I go ahead and move my major up to induce a trade. Wanted to get rid of his lieutenant that was there, and then I continue with my plan of advancing on the in the center there. So attack with that piece in the middle, lose a lieutenant, so I'm actually down 2 pieces at this point. The captain I lost over here and that lieutenant in the center. Decided I'd go ahead and put my major there. Hopefully I could, he might come down with a piece, I could take it and get something back before trading. He did just charge him with the sergeant there, so that was good that I got that piece. But then he blindly trades captains. So a lot going on, in the first few moves of this game, pretty hastily. Right here, he brings this piece down to threaten my sergeant. Normally I might have a captain or a lieutenant sitting there, but after just losing a captain, I didn't feel that risky. But this piece could very well take out my sergeant. It might be even stronger, so I didn't want to reveal it or potentially lose it. So I advanced against it with my lieutenant instead, and then he ended up kind of avoiding my lieutenant, but staying in my territory. So I figure, okay, come down with this captain. This is pretty weak, I'm figuring. Of course, he moves up with that piece. I decide, okay, I can get a piece back, take with my major. So I get that scout, and then it's really impulsive what I did there. I just kind of hit his general on a whim. I think I was looking for more than just a scout to recoup with my major before trading. I was figuring, okay, his major's probably backed by a good piece, but what about this random piece, from under the lake? Maybe he was moving it over to get me to move my major over so he could trade, because having just given up a scout to discover my major, he would have preferred to do that. So really impulsive move, and not really one that I could afford at the moment because I was already down a captain, had lost that over here, and a lieutenant, had lost that in the center. And then I did discover general, which is better than a colonel. And yes, I did also know 2 majors. But to lose a major and to go down 3 pieces was not ideal. So definitely a bit of an impulsive move. Something that would probably tend to happen more for me when I'm playing on my phone. Just makes me probably play with, again, a little bit less focus and a little bit less carefulness. But it is what it is. I threatened that piece, trying to get rid of that. He just leaves it there, and then I take it, and I'm glad he left it there, because if he had attacked with that miner, that would have been very useful for him. So I don't know why he left it there. especially given that that was a known captain. But then he comes down with this piece and just basically charges in with this marshal, which completely caught me off guard. I'm down 4 pieces now, but that was a really unnecessary piece to take to reveal his marshal. Given that I already have information on these 3 pieces, I think you want a lot more than just the marshal, or a lot more than just the lieutenant to reveal the marshal. So at this point, I'm happy I have good info, but I'm also down 4 pieces, so I need to be able to recoup that somehow. So I decide my plan, now that I know his general and his marshal, I can come up with a colonel. And kind of have my way with the left side. And I could always support my colonel with the bluff that might ward off his general, like pretend I have my marshal there. But he's pretty aggressive with that marshal there, and then he scouts my colonel, which is fine. I'm not too worried about that. I definitely at least want to get something else with my colonel. So I charge in, and immediately he trades. So that's definitely pretty far from ideal. Because that sort of piece, I mean, there's always a chance of that being a colonel and us trading, but that piece was kind of needed to be the piece that I could recoup something with. And again, continues to be really aggressive with his marshal here. Takes a sergeant, pretty much blind, doesn't know what's behind it. I do get the sergeant back there, which is good, and I feel pretty fearless with that major because we just traded colonels on that side. But again, his marshal's just moving next to anything and everything here. So pretty fearless on his part there. So he sort of is making a path, moving these pieces down. I decide I can just bring up my minor, try to do some exploring on that side here. I figured this bomb could maybe in a way serve as kind of a secret weapon for me, something he might end up hitting with a colonel or maybe even his marshal or general if I'm really lucky. Maybe I could get something back from there. But then he brings this scout. He paves this whole way just to open up the middle to the right side. Scouts my captain, but he already knew the captain. And not only did he already know the captain because I took the minor, but I also took the sergeant in the center. So it's the 3rd time he's discovered that captain. But at any rate, he realizes he remembers it, comes down with a major to go take it. I'm doing my own exploration on the left side here. Trying to find a bomb or something. Takes that captain, and I take it with my colonel immediately. And as soon as I do that, he moves his major out. Or, sorry, his general out. And I realize immediately he's going to come down and trap this piece. And I also realize there's basically nothing I can do about that. I don't really have any defense whatsoever. The only thing I could do would be to try to, I don't know, move a sergeant or like a minor up. Try to pretend like, I have some backing from my colonel. But with his marshal there pressuring, I wasn't going to be able to cycle through pieces well enough to be able to get my colonel to my marshal. And I think that would have probably been gratuitous anyway. If I'm sacrificing pieces left and right just to run my colonel back to my marshal, he might even realize that that's the marshal, and that would be possibly worse to give that info away for free when I'm down all these pieces, 2 captains and 2 lieutenants. I did get that major back, but I'm about to lose a colonel. And my main advantage here at this point is that I have information, so I don't want to give that up. So I take that piece out, that's a bomb, so that's good. Kind of a bit of a breakthrough there. Might be able to kind of connect the left and the middle, which is good for my counterattack. Again, I'm pretty fearless with that major. Figured there's probably not another colonel there since we already traded, so I go ahead and take that with my major. And then this piece I move over. He does not care. Just no care in the world for that possibly being a good piece. And then he actually takes it, so he doesn't even think this is a good piece either. But he seems sold on this piece. But I don't want this major sitting here. I need to be able to have leeway to move up the center as I please. So I decide I'm going to pressure it with another believable piece that happened to be my spy. And then he moves in, which kind of scared me a bit. I was hoping if I did that, he would hit the bomb. But he doesn't. He just leaves it there to be guarded by his marshal. At this point, I sort of do what I can to try to, pretend that my colonel could be guarded. Doesn't even care. Like, the possibility of this being the marshal just does not even register with him. Nor does the possibility of this being the marshal even register with him. So maybe it would have been better if I did cycle out my pieces and bring my colonel all the way back. But he just takes it, and takes the sergeant too, because why not? Because there's no chance of this being my marshal either, of course, naturally. So I scout that piece, just try to figure something out. Got a minor, but I'm down 5 pieces at this point, so this is not, this is not looking all that well. I'm going to need to get some pieces back in pretty soon here to make a game of this. I do have a lot of info on him, but I'm kind of running out of pieces to even, take anything with at this point. Being down captains, down lieutenants, down colonels. He helps me out a little bit here. Just kind of randomly moves that captain and hits my major. I guess he wanted to know what it was. But I was kind of glad he did that for 2 reasons. One, I just got a free captain, so I'm only down 4 pieces instead of 5. Woohoo. Secondly, him discovering that this is a major makes this being, say, a general, especially general, a lot more likely, which means I don't think he's going to call this bluff, so I can leave it there. That makes it a believable bluff. You know, maybe he'd threaten my spy later with his marshal. But the fact that my major is covering up, you know, a piece that's also been threatening his major could be a general. So I like that he did that. So at this point, though, I realize, okay, I don't want this general to be coming, you know, near my pieces, so I need to pretend. If he's going to believe this is a good piece, I need to pretend like I can cut this piece off. Maybe he thinks it's the marshal, too. So I'm like, okay, like, surely he's not going to risk that. So he moves over here, and actually, I think it might have been a smart idea for me to actually just take that instantly with my general, because this could have been a scout, or it could have been a miner. He could have, you know, threatened my spy. What I did do is move my major up, so that if he moved up, then I'd move my spy back. But his general would be blocked, so I wouldn't be terribly concerned. I could still get this piece. But it guarantees, you know, that I would get this piece if I just took it with my general. I think I was thinking it was probably a trash piece that he might be trying to move up against my spy, so I was trying to avoid it. Avoid taking it with my general. If he'd hit, then I would have accepted that and then hit further. But then he moved that piece there, and then I take. And it's a captain, which is a great piece to get for me. Forces him to move away, so then I can move back and then again smash into these pieces. So I get a captain. I'm only down 3 pieces now. Of course, move that spy up, maintain the bluff. And then right there, that bomb pays off. I get a major back, actually up a major. And then I get a minor, that unknown piece. And then he moves around with that scout. I realize that's not a threat because I can just trade scouts if he tries to scout my spy, which is exactly what he does. And then I get another minor there. So we're not looking too bad at this point. I am down a colonel, but I'm up a major. I've gotten both captains back, and I'm down 2 lieutenants. So I'm down 3 pieces, but I'm actually up 1. And then I'm also up some smaller pieces here, minors, sergeants. So this is a fairly even game, I'd say, right now, especially with the info advantage that I still have because he doesn't know my marshal. So at this point, now that he knows this is a bomb because he smacked his major into it. And also, I just want to point this out. This just stunned me how aggressive he was with his marshal the whole game. From all the pieces that he moved next to on my right side, to me moving this piece up, he does not have a care in the world about that. Just moves right next to my marshal fearlessly. I was hoping to cut him off because I didn't want him to go to the center, or be able to pressure me from both sides, but he didn't even care, not one bit. So I'm forced to move away. Threatens my major. I move back. He threatens it again. I move back, and I'm wondering, oh, is he gonna move next to my spy? And yes, he does. Finally, his completely needless risks end up not working out to his advantage. Finally, you know, as you continue to take more and more just illogical risks, eventually one's not going to pay off, and you can see a great example of that there. He got up a lot of pieces by taking a lot of those risks, but he wasn't able to maintain it, and in fact, it worked to his detriment to be, continue doing those things. After a certain point, and he lost his marshal there. So I hit that bomb with my sergeant. I'm expecting, okay, I know the general here, colonels may be over here, something like that. I'm just trying to, explore on this left side if I can. If he wants to trade general, fine with me. I'm not worried about that. I was actually going to bring up a scout and scout some more over here. But then he moves in with his general, and I was surprised that he was so willing to trade until the next move happened, which is this. And then I realized at this point, okay, chances that that is a colonel then are pretty high, because why else would he have been so eager to trade generals? And why else would he immediately move next to 2 of my majors that are clustered? It's not like he's trying to bluff, one of my majors just to get it away from his side of the board. But he's guaranteeing that he's going to be able to take one of these pieces under the assumption this is a bomb, which I was under that assumption. So I just hit it because what else can I do? And it is the colonel, so I confirm that as being true. So I end up having to retreat with my major, and I kind of realized at this point, like, okay, I did get his marshal, but he did pretty well there, to take one of my majors, because how this game looks now is I'm up a marshal, but I'm also down the next 3 pieces in line, colonel, lieutenant, lieutenant. He still has his spy left, so I'm up 2 minors, but it is kind of my marshal against his 3 pieces, so I have to find a way to avoid trading, and to get lieutenants back instead. So at this point he comes up with that piece. I think I'll speed the game up just a little bit here. So at this point I'm hoping to find the major because I want to avoid trading the major if I can. But I don't necessarily have to avoid trading the major. In fact, actually, I think at this point in the game I was okay with trading majors because my major was known and his was unknown. But what I didn't want to do was trade captains because that would be the piece that I would need along with my marshal to trap his lieutenants. I could afford to trade majors, but I couldn't trade both of those pieces. So again, I'm coming up with a scout here, seeing if I can discover anything. The fact that he moved next to my major made me think that was his major, but I couldn't be completely sure of that because, again, maybe it was a bluff. Maybe he's moving his spy next to my major because he knows I'm not going to hit it because I can't afford to just lose the major like that. So a lot of kind of just moving around, trying to figure out, what his pieces might be. So I'm kind of, moving the scout around a lot, just trying to bluff it as something, hoping to get maybe spy, maybe, figure out if another piece is the major that isn't this one, what piece that might be. He comes up with this back row piece, which I'm figuring is probably weak. But he moves next to my scout, so I decide to retreat because I don't want to lose my scout for nothing. But I don't only have so much other than just my marshal, so that's not a great piece to give up for that either. But just kind of leave it there. And at this point I'm figuring like, okay, this is probably not his major. So I move up with my captain. I'm like, this piece I could definitely take out with my captain. And then he decides to guard that with this piece. I'm like, okay, maybe this is the major. Again, kind of hard to tell at this point. Could be this piece, could be the one hanging back. I don't think it's the back row piece. So I fire a scout there, and my logic there is if he moves that piece away to not allow me to discover it, then I would take that, this piece for free. So I figure he'll let me check this piece. And I scout it, and it's the major. So I'm like, okay, good. So I discovered the major. So at this point, I can't stop him from trading majors, but I'm not per se keen on trading majors because I know his major now, so it's not like it would be an advantage to me to trade my known major for his unknown. But I move in with my marshal there. Again, I'm assuming this back row piece is in his spy. And then he kind of tells me that this is his spy based on his movement there. But I also see that unless this is his captain, I've got a pretty good in here with my own captain to kind of force his pieces back. So I decide, okay, I'll swing around. I'm not too worried about this piece here. Again, it's just this scout. I'm thinking, I actually had forgotten that this sergeant moved. But again, I'm able to plunge in. That is not his captain. I'm able to take that sergeant. And at this point, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, all I have to do is save the scout. I had forgotten that this sergeant had moved, so he was able to recoup that. But I do discover his captain in turn. So it's good and bad. Again, sergeants are equal again. I do know his spy, which is good. And I've discovered his major. We trade captains. So now, since we've traded captains, which I kind of was forced to do, to not reveal that this was a scout, I didn't want to have that piece hanging around in my territory causing trouble. But now I can't afford to trade majors. That's the one sort of condition now, because I have to have a piece to be able to trap lieutenants with. If we trade majors, then his colonel and his 2 lieutenants can fill the rows, and that's going to be really hard to beat. But my scout, keeping that unknown was good, because I was able to come up, walk up, and take the spy. And at this point, I see that he's sort of trying to come trap my major. Sort of moves away a little bit there. And this is actually a bit of an inaccuracy on my part here. This is actually, I'm basically offering him the exact same thing as a trade of majors. Because if he took this with his colonel, then I would take back with my marshal, naturally. But then his major would functionally then be the same thing as the colonel that he would have had if we had traded majors. So that was actually probably a bit of a mistake on my part, where I didn't even realize I was actually offering him the equivalent of a trade. But thankfully he didn't take it. And at this point I realized, like, okay, like I can't pass my major through like that again. So I avoid, definitely, there. And I also realized I have the scout. I might be able to try to bring over a scout and find something. That's exactly what I'm going to do here. So I'm definitely looking for lieutenants. I guess a minor would be fine too. Going up minors and eliminating any threat to my flag would be good. So I do discover a minor. I end up going ahead and taking that. But definitely cannot trade majors at this point. So he brings up this piece, which is bound to be a lieutenant. I'm assuming one of his last minors is going to be one of these pieces on the back row here. So at this point, I have a big advantage in minors, and I'm figuring, especially since his colonel is just kind of sitting over here, if I can sort of move my pieces in a way that would help me get, an advantage where I could bring up a minor, that would be great. The only problem is this piece is here. But once I get my major in position here, I actually decide that I want to trade lieutenants, and then my minor appears to be able to just kind of walk free and just go to, have my way with his setup whichever way I want, because his major's blocked off here, and his colonel's way out of position. So I'm going to get my minor way up the board before he can even try to threaten bringing his colonel this way. And I'm always going to be able to move over and then down and still block both pieces' entrance onto the right side of the board. It's a perfect spot for my marshal there. He can't come in with either piece. So I'm able to come through with my minor. Now at this point I was thinking, I did remember that his marshal came from here, kind of the side it seemed, which maybe could indicate a corner flag. But that seemed too obvious to me. I didn't understand why he would have just left his colonel sitting here for no reason and, let my major just assume a really strong position over here if his flag was just sitting here. So I figure it might be open somewhere toward the center, especially because his general was over here. So I'd kind of balance the setup if his flag was more in this area. So I decided to bypass the possibility of a corner flag and come down with my minor, towards these pieces. And again, I've got plenty of pieces here. If I discover a lieutenant, that's fine. It's exactly what I do, and I don't mind that at all because I'm still up 2 minors, and crucially, he doesn't have 3 pieces to my marshal now, like if we traded majors, but only 2, only the 1 lieutenant and the colonel, which is a winning formula if I'm up 2 minors. So at this point, I realize, okay, maybe his flag's in the corner. Maybe it's sitting here. I'm not exactly sure. He's got 2 pieces left somewhere. But at this point, I'm fine to trade majors because I know that my minor's going to be able to outclass his lieutenant. But I decided to move up with a minor here. And at this point, I do want to point out I was having a little bit of time concern where we were about probably like 45 minutes into the game. So I had to move quickly and make decisive moves to not draw the game because at this point I did have a pretty clear advantage. And I do want to point out too, the move I'm doing at this point is pretty risky because if this is a minor of his last minor, if that's right here, then the fact that my 1 piece that stood between my flag and this potential minor, was forging into his setup. If that was a minor, that could have come down and threatened my flag, depending on if I found his flag first. But didn't appear to be anything of the sort. Moves this piece up to block my entrance, and now I'm thinking, okay, like his flag has got to be over here somewhere. But I move in with my major to, displace this piece, force it away, be able to continue to bring my minor closer to the flag. So he offers me a trade there. I figure worst thing that happens is, again, we trade minors, which is exactly what we did. The better thing that happens is that I take his lieutenant, and he takes my minor, and I'm simply up a minor and a marshal in exchange for that colonel, which, again, is a winning formula either way. But at this point, I don't have to worry about any threat to my flag, so I'm very content with that. So perfectly happy to trade here. He offers that. I don't mind one bit. Because at this point, especially with that move, I've trapped his colonel, forces him to reveal his lieutenant, and my 2 minors are going to completely overwhelm his lieutenant, so I can speed the game up a little bit more at this point. But at this point, it's kind of just a waiting game in terms of getting my minor to the flag. And I think I only had about 4 minutes or so left to win the game at this point, a difference of 4 minutes between the game time and his buffer that was left, so I had to move quickly. But I was able to displace his colonel after some movement up here, and I was able to come in with my minor. And his lieutenant, again, couldn't do anything. I could have brought up my other minor if I needed to, but took out the bomb, and then on the next move, took out his flag, and that was the end of the game. So a very competitive game, and for the second half of the game I kind of had an advantage ever since he lost his marshal. It seemed like 2 very different games, the first half of the game and the second half of the game. The first half of the game was a lot of sloppy play by me, losing a lot of pieces, actually going down at one point 5 pieces, including a colonel, but then gained a captain, gained another captain, he lost his major, and then losing his marshal, and then at that point I had the advantage, and I had to just not lose it. A little bit of a scare losing that major up here. But I was able to carry that advantage through to the end. So it was a good win, brought me to 3 wins and 1 loss so far in the tournament. I was pretty happy with that, and I thought he played a really good game. A lot of risks that he played with his marshal. Some of them paid off, the last one didn't, but a remarkable game, I'd say, for someone who's 250 elo. So definitely a good game to him, even if I was kind of skeptical of some of the risks that he took. But I'll go ahead and leave it there for now, and I'll see you all in my next video.